Good morning, everyone. Thank you for meeting me at the easel. Today, we're going to be doing a vintage Valentine for a real Queen of Hearts on Valentine's Day. You can see my reference image off to the left, and we're going to be using a fun little trick today to help make something that has this much detail easier for a beginner. So we're going to paint in our background, but then we're actually going to put our traceable directly onto our painting using medium gel. You could, in theory, use school glue. That would work, but I would water it down a little bit like you would for paper mache, so that way it would stay down. In any case, let's go ahead and get started. I'm thinking they had like a very cream background for this, but I'm thinking I want to go with like a gold. So we're going to do a gold background. So I'm going to go ahead and take my traceable down. And it's important when you're cutting your traceable to cut it, directly where the lines are, because this is going to go directly on top of your painting. Think about like when you're doing an iron-on transfer, you want to snip right along the line. And I'm thinking I'm going to do like a royal gold. So I'm going to use like cheap craft paint for this. I do have like gold, um, thicker body paint, but because I'm going to be putting something on top of it, the medium itself doesn't matter so much as the color for me. So I'm never going to say don't use, your cheaper craft paints. They have a use. They do have a use. They have their place. And I'm going to use my 1-inch flat brush to just kind of throw my paint on. And sometimes I quite literally throw it, as you see. So I definitely don't like to put like important things behind my easel when I'm working. And don't forget your tops and your sides. You want a complete cover. You may ask why I say to go ahead and cover when we're going to stick that mostly that's going to cover a lot of the canvas, but it will really help where you've got your lines to help make sure that you've covered everywhere you have to cover. That, and it will keep it from being the canvas uneven when you put your paper down. And I just used regular copy paper to print mine off. Nothing special, no special supplies. I love this theme this month for Vintage Valentine, but I honestly wish that maybe I had gone with something that wasn't so holiday oriented, because these will be a little harder to sell as I'm working on them, after the holiday is over. But if it makes the viewers happy, then I will gladly do this. I am going to try and do several back to back today. So that way, if there was one you really liked and you want to give it as a gift, you'll be able to see the video on how to do that. Today we're doing, this Queen of Hearts one, and then after this, we're going to be doing a cute little kitty cat. And then after that, we're going to be doing kind of like a cute little boy and a girl and a puppy. And I am very much looking forward to this. And I'm not necessarily always going to choose the colors that were directly in the reference image for all of these, just because I want them to be able to be gifted at more than just Valentine's Day. And I may not necessarily use all of the wording that's on all of these Valentines, just because, if they're wanting to give it as a gift after Valentine's Day, it's just a, hey, I'm thinking about you. I want that to be, something that they're able to do with these, not have it be so specific. And it's always important to tell the people in your life that, you care about them, not just on Valentine's Day. Now I'm going to flip my canvas so I can get the bottom side, being careful not to touch the areas that I've already painted. and bottoms. Because in this particular painting, it doesn't matter what's the top and what's the bottom because we made the background all the same color. There's no reason to flip it back the other way. This is just now the new top. And I didn't quite give myself enough paint, so I'm gonna use the cap for this instead of a whole new putting more paint on my palette, since I only need just that littlest bit left. You just want to do a quick scan of your canvas, check to see if you've got any areas that are white still. And once you know that you're good and you don't have any white little bubbles, just kind of brush out any major stroke marks that you're seeing, because we kind of want a very consistent look. All right, and I'm going to mute my mic for a second. I'm going to dry my painting so that way we can attach the girl. You'll know your canvas is dry when it isn't shiny, but if you're using a super metallic paint like we've just done here, it's just a good idea to test, run your finger down the center and see if you've got any paint that comes up. If not, then you're good to go. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our traceable and we are just going to brush a little of this gel on the back, or watered down school glue. Not super watered down though, because you don't want it to, take your paper apart. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this gel on my palette. And I'm going to rinse off and use my 1-inch brush for this. And you're going to want to squeeze off some of that extra water, because you don't want a lot of water on here. And you're just going to brush it onto the back side. Very thin layer. All right, and once you've got your piece covered, you're going to stick it where you want it on your canvas. And you're just kind of going to smooth it out. It should mostly stick. If you've got white areas where it's sticking up, we don't want that. We're going to go back over, rinse off your brush, dry it back off again, and then we're going to do a heavier layer of this gel medium over the whole top of this cutout. So I'm going to put a little more gel medium on my palette. Ooh. And I'm going to put this on quite heavily over the top, and you're going to want to let it kind of go over the side. It should be kind of wet, and it may smear whatever you use to your ink from printing off your traceable. That's fine, since we're painting over it. This is just to help us keep our lines in place. Oop, and I don't think I put enough on the back side, so I'm having a bit of a problem here. So I'm going to put more on my back side because it is not sticking to my canvas as it should. Now I'm going to switch over to a slightly heavier coat because I really want this to stick and I'm a little worried about it now. There we go. That's better. And I'm going to finish covering the front. It should make your paper a little translucent. That's how you'll know you've got enough on there to be doing the job. And I made a bit of a mess of my workstation getting that last little bit out of the tube. So I'm just going to clean it up off the side here. Okay. And I'm just going to run my brush over the whole area to smooth out any bumps. And then I'm going to dry it. I'm going to mute the mic for a second. sorry, completely forgot to switch the mic back. As I meant to be saying aloud, yellow is a very translucent color. So you can kind of see where the hearts are underneath here. And that's something to keep in mind when you're working with any warm colors. It won't matter here a whole lot because we are wanting to kind of keep, track of where our lines are to help fill in this incredibly detailed little painting. But, if you were working on another project and you were wanting to try and cover something with a warm color, like if you were working on layers, you would just want to mix a little bit of white in with your red, orange, or yellow, and then add another layer of it to get the vibrancy back. But that would be the way you'd have to cover over. Like if you were wanting to do, a warm anything that was a warm color over top of, especially like a cold color. If you were wanting to put something yellow over top of something green, you would definitely want to mix some yellow into, or mix some white into your yellow, and then go back over on a second layer to add your straight yellow over your green. I'm finding that I'm going to be winding up using this maple yellow a lot for these vintage style hearts or these vintage style Valentines, just because the whites are not a very super like vibrant. You wouldn't expect that on a vintage Valentine. That would be very unusual. And you see I kind of covered her hand there, but that's okay because I'm going to be going over her hand with a flush tone. So feel free to just go right over her hand if it's, keeping you from getting into the color space that you're trying to work in. You don't have to be super exact with most of this because this is going to be like your lightest color. And as you see, the lines don't really disappear, which is part of the reason why I wanted you to do this kind of technique for this. It definitely makes it easier for a beginner painter who wants to do something that might be a little outside of their drawing ability or outside of their skill set. And I'm trying to be, gearing my streams mostly towards beginner painters. So I might see a little more of this technique in the future. Now I'm going to mix a little bit of white in now in a couple of areas so that way it doesn't look like a solid color. I want this to look sort of washed out. I don't want this to look super uniform. We're trying to make this look sort of like an aged, beautiful old Valentine, like maybe something that somebody kept for a long period of time because they, really loved the person that gave it to them, or something such, something along those lines. I'm imagining an extra story to it, but that's what makes art fun. You give it a story. All right, so we've kind of got a little bit of extra detailing in there. And I'm going to throw a little bit of white down in here too. We're just kind of washing it out a little bit. And I'm going to add a quick couple of bits of my yellow back in a couple of places just to avoid it looking super streaky. All right, so we've got the basis of the background of the heart in. And I think we did a really good idea of the job of not letting this be the same. It allows that to pop a little bit better, in my opinion. Something that I imagine that this was probably truly just a die cut card, and it was just being scanned onto a surface. I imagine that Valentine would have looked actually cut out like this without this square. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start placing in all of this red. There's a lot of red going on. And I am going to use cadmium deep red hue. You could use cadmium red or scarlet or quinacridone scarlet. Truly any shade of red that makes you think of Valentine's Day or the Queen of Hearts. And we're going to kind of start from the top up so that way it makes it easier to not put our hands in our paint. If you find that, like me, that's something that you struggle with, anchoring your elbow down on the table helps a little bit. Now, I don't think I'm going to stick with this one round very long just because there's a lot going on. And I don't think I need to worry about maintaining all these little dots that are around the neckline. So I'm going to switch over to my tiniest detail brush. It's a 110. And I'm going to start filling it in this way. You can still, if you were really up close, you'd be able to see that some of the little dots are still kind of visible, but we sort of know that we should know where they belong or can improvise where they should belong. And we'll wind up doing another layer of red over this because, like I said, red is not a color that covers really well. I would commit murder to wear a dress this beautiful. Maybe one day I'll have to make a full like Renaissance style dress. I don't even know where I'd store it. I do not have the storage space for something like that, but I have a hankering so fierce to make something this complicated. The most complicated thing I'd sewn was this Victorian style steampunk dress that I had made not once, but twice because I did a practice one for my Halloween wedding reception. Oh, and it was so gorgeous. I'm so proud of that. It came out amazing. I'm actually hoping to go take pictures with it at like a steampunk coffee shop with a friend of mine who did a similar style dress in like a red and white for like Bertie Bott's Every Flavor Beans for Halloween or the Harry Potter celebration weekend last weekend. Super excited. I'm supposed to be seeing her tomorrow to kind of go through some scrap fabric that a mutual friend gave us to craft with. So hopefully we'll be seeing a lot of quilting here very soon because I have to finish that quilt before my camping trip for Diagnosis Day in March. So I got a lot of work ahead of me to do. Lots of sewing, lots of painting, lots of gardening that needs to happen. I got to start putting seedlings in my tray so that way in March they can go down into the ground, which is sort of exciting. I'm looking forward to that. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and start filling in down here. I wish there was like a lot more really popular like Renaissance festivals near me. I think I would enjoy that so much. I think that'd be so much fun. If you're wondering why, even though all this is red, I'm still following these lines, it's because when the brush strokes show, I still want to be able to tell the story of the draping of the fabric. And maybe it's the seamstress in me that feels compelled to really aim that along. But if I was making a dress like this, that's what I would want, people to remember and see most about it. And it will help you when you're going to go back in and add like your lines for showing more of the movement of the dress if your brush strokes mirror that same concept for where the fabric is. So even though we're using this beginner style idea, it won't look that way. It's going to look amazing. And definitely if you do any of my, follow alongs here and tutorials, you know, um, my Facebook page has a sounding board. I'd love to see all of your creations in the sounding board Show me the things that you've made using my videos, or even things that you've just made yourself. I love art. I love to see, people's growth when they're working on things. It doesn't have to be just mine. If you follow videos from like Angela Anderson or the Art Sherpa or who's another one? Painting with Jane, Ginger Cook. Those are some pretty popular ones on YouTube. Those are the ones that I learned to paint with, and I definitely appreciate those resources being out there. And definitely, especially like the art Sherpa, she breaks down a bunch of the different types of techniques. If there's a specific area you're struggling with, definitely, go watch some of her videos. Is anyone doing anything exciting this weekend? All right, now we're going to keep going, working our way down. And again, we're going to try and follow this line of the fabric because it is being sort of draped. Like, this is truly not like a straight down, like it's tucked and rivets and rivets and rivets and rows and of this fabric. It's a lot, like if it didn't have all these tucks, it would probably be 3 times longer of a dress and it would be, dragging the ground. So you're thinking about this in the way that a lot of dresses are like a modern bustle, but like all the way around. Just because there's so much fabric. I imagine this would just be absolutely gorgeous to wear. It makes me wish my husband liked to dance or, do public events more. I would love to go to a ball. And I know that they do them for like charity events and whatnot from time to time. I think that would be super exciting and fun. But I cannot imagine him dancing. Not in a million lifetimes. That'll just have to be a fun little dream for me. But that's okay. I married him knowing that that was something that wasn't in his wheelhouse. Definitely always keep in mind when you've got dreams whether or not there's something that would upset your partner or isn't something that they're comfortable with. Definitely always keep your dreams in a realistic sense. Not saying don't dream. I'm just saying if you do dream, keep your expectations in check. Now, it's a little harder for me to get to that section right now without my elbow ending up in it, so I'm going to turn my canvas upside down. And we're still kind of like following the idea of where this fabric would be draped. I'm following this line here. Mm-hmm. And then for this one, we'll follow it like that. And we'll wind up going over this with a lighter shade. I mean, if you chose to do this in another color, like, I don't know, you were envisioning something like a bell dress and we're doing it in yellow, you could always kind of, in between where the lines are, add in a little bit of a lighter shade after we, finish up this base color. Because that will help kind of show where the light is hitting the folds of the fabric. Because it absolutely would. The light would not hit all of this fabric evenly because parts of it would be creased and whatnot from being draped. All right, now I'm going to flip it back over. And we're going to continue to work our way sort of in this direction. Like all of these are going to be coming sort of in this direction. The only lines you want to be super careful about, like not going over, because is going to be your edge where the gold is. You do not want to go over that one just because that'll be so much harder to clean up. But if you do, you can always go over it with white after it dries and then make your correction. But any of these internal lines, you can see I cover a little bit of my heart there. It's not a big deal because we're going to be painting over that area with another color. And I'll probably wind up having to put white down first to correct it just because this is a very rich color here, even if it is a little opaque. Okay, and I'm just kind of wanting to get a little around my heart there first. And then we're going to put in our brush strokes here. And again, being a little careful. We don't have to be super careful about our heart because like I said, we're going to be painting it anyway, but the less cleanup you have to do, the easier it will be for yourself. Okay, and then continuing around, following this kind of drape here. I'm also putting out a call for ideas to add to my Patreon poll for next month for themes to paint in March. We've decided and started our February theme, but I'm already thinking ahead to March. What am I painting in March? Tell me what you want to see. The vote itself will be in Patreon, and you have to be at least a $2 member of Patreon to vote in that poll. But I'm looking crowdsourcing ideas for what to put in that poll to start with. Narrow it down. Tell me, what would you like to paint? Tell me in the comments below or comment in chat. I'll be compiling those ideas over the next week to put it in a poll. And you can see here, I'm painting over these hearts because I can still see them and I don't really need them there for this. That's a little more work than strictly necessary to paint around them. So we're just going to paint over top of them. We can still see them, they're still there, but for the moment, they're sort of in the way. It would just be too cumbersome to paint around. And it would not result in a pretty looking painting. So I kind of got one side done, and I'm just putting a couple of strokes area where it's particularly like light for some reason. We still want some of that variation, but you do want it to be mostly filled in. And because I've just done over here, it would stick my hand in it. So I'm going to turn it upside down to finish putting in the red on this side. I'm going to trace around the heart a little bit here first before extending my brush strokes out. And then we're going to continue to kind of follow this drape. I want to keep my line from my bottom of my drape pretty clear. I mean, I know we're going to be painting over that area, but it would be unduly difficult to get it back white again. So we don't make it harder than it has to be for yourself. And I'm going to turn it again because I'm struggling to kind of get where I need to get. Okay. We're almost done putting in the base layer of the dress. We're not going to put in our highlights or anything right away. We're going to continue filling in our base layer before we put in our next layer. We want to have all of our basic layer in first before we start adding the texture and the highlights and the shadows and all of that. My coworker says and all of that after almost everything, and now she has me doing it. I'm going to have to scold her when I come back to work on Monday. I do work a regular day job in addition to my business, so I am, busy a lot of the time. But I am never too busy to answer a quick, painting question or anything, so always feel free to shoot me a message about art. I will make the time. Right, and this part, because it's not really, we're not seeing the drape, we're just going to have it go straight up and down from the heart, following the angle of this line here. So we're done with that part for now. So I'm going to rinse off my brush. And now I'm going to start putting in the actual blue down here. I think we're going to do that first. We're going to put the blue in. And it's a really soft light blue, which I think is really adorable. Like, blue balances off red so nicely. And I'm just going to use light blue. And I'm just going to follow the lines that I've got here, just going straight up and down. This would be like an accordion pleat, I would imagine, on a dress, like knife pleats. And we'll add some white in here, but we're first going to stick some of this blue down. And you want to make sure you cover the edges of the bottom, because you don't really want to have your black line from printing this off super visible at the bottom. Right, and I'm going to take a little bit of white, and I'm just kind of put a couple of strokes in a couple of places. We want to tell a little about the light source in this spot while it's still wet, because we're not going to really do a whole lot with this area. So it makes it easier to add that shading in while it's all still wet. And that's sort of it for now. We'll come back to that area. Oh, I missed a spot. I missed this whole little section over here. Shame on me. And then we're going to add a little of that white in that small spot. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and put in the white for our little, we'll go with ruffles, these little lace ruffles at the end. Because when we put our white paper down, some of the ink may have bled a little bit, and our lines may not have been clean from the dress, so we're just going to cover this with white. It gives you the opportunity to lighten it up and make any corrections that you need to make from your dread, from the red part of your dress. And you see how much of a difference that made on this side versus this side. It's a trivial thing, but it makes a big difference. And then we're almost done with the trim on the bottom, and then we'll start looking at the white that we need to, update and kind of makes look super visible in a couple of other areas. Okay. So we've also got a little bit of that blue here at this neck collar before it goes back white. So I'm going to take a little bit of my blue that I used down here, and I'm going to kind of keep it towards the center because it kind of goes out to being white. So I'm going to save that last little bit to kind of blend the blue out. And it looks like it's mostly white there at the thinnest part, so I'm not going to put any at all there. Right, now I'm going to take my white and I'm going to work from the ends in. And we're just kind of blending it in, just dragging it. Lightening the overall blue a little bit and making that end a little crisper. And I'm literally only putting the smallest dot of paint. And I'm gonna kind of cover this black line that I used for the skin where to demarcate where the skin is, because I kind of don't want that line to be that noticeable. So I'm just going to clean that out a little bit. Turn this around a little bit so you get a little closer. There we go. You can see it lightened up our blue quite a bit, but that's what we wanted. And now we're gonna go ahead and fill in this area with white. Again, we're still gonna be able to see our lines. So we're not gonna worry about having it be too perfect. You're just kind of wanting to lighten it up like we did with the cuff at the bottom. I know it's a small area to work in, but when possible, try to keep it radiating out from the collar. As you can see, my lines underneath are still pretty visible, but the white has been, drastically improved the coloration. Even though this paper was white, remember we kind of made it see-through. We put all of that glue on it, all of that gel, and then put it down against this gold. It definitely would have changed the tonality of the paper. We've got kind of our white in, and we do have a little bit of that white and blue again at the cuff here. The bit that's closest to the actual like coming up away from the hand is mostly white. So we're going to go ahead and stick our white in there. And same on the other side. And then we'll stick a little bit of our blue in, and we're going to want to you don't want to cover the little square rectangle piece because that part will actually be red, but you're going to want to stick the blue in the corner and then just kind of let the color drag out into where your white is. And I had a little too much white paint there, so I'm going to lift some of that up. And I need to let that blend a little there. Okay. I'm going to take my little bit of my red paint from the dress and I'm going to fill in that rectangle. What a glorious way to tie that back in. Such a smart idea from like a design standpoint. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start putting in her hair. Now you're going to want to use whatever color hair makes the most sense for you. I recommend using, if you're giving it to someone, use their hair color, or if it's yours, use yours. I'm going to use a bit of a red ochre for my hair. I'm going to find it. And then maybe a little bit of yellow ochre. And I'm going to put just the littlest bit down because I don't really need a whole lot. So I'm going to start by kind of filling in where the head is. I'm not going to think too hard about, the placement and design and whatnot of this right now. I'm just kind of filling in the color. And I'm going to try to keep my little dots unpainted because those are going to be little white dots. And it'll be a little harder to get those totally white again if I put this color on there. So continuing to use your smallest 110 detail brush would definitely, make your life a little easier here. Right, and I'm going to do above the little dots. And I'm going to put another little quick layer in a couple of areas so that way there are some parts that are darker and a little lighter than others, because that's kind of how hair works. It would not all catch the light the same way. And I might go ahead and just add just the tiniest bit of the red from the dress in there for my hair. Not everywhere and not uniformly, but I do dye my hair this color, and sometimes it shows up a little more vibrant in some places than others. Right, and now we're going to do this part, and it should sort of like follow, again, like we did the curves for the dress, follow the curves of this little round circle bit. And then the same for this one. And again, add a little bit of a darker color as a highlight, just for a little bit of fun. I think I'm going to stick a little bit of white in here. My hair isn't white, mind you, but I kind of want to be able to set a little more value in there, a little more variation in the color. All right, and that's mostly it for the hair. We might add a little more later, but for now we're done with it. Right, and now I'm going to use my iridescent gold. I'm not going to use the gold I used for the background because I kind of want this part to be really, really shiny. And I'm going to start putting in my gold details. I'm going to go in and paint my crown. I can go ahead and paint over the heart. That's not a big deal. We all know that there's going to be a heart in the center, and I'm assuming you can probably draw a heart. Right, so there's that part. And it kind of is a gold here in these little hearts down here as well. But I am going to go ahead and go in with white real quick to clean up my lines from my heart, where it kind of got away from me a little bit when I was putting in the dress. So I'm just cleaning my lines so that way they're nice and sharp. And the same over here with all these little ones. It'd be easier if I turn it upside down at this point. And again over on this side, where I had a little bit of bleed through. And I'm actually also going to go over where I had all those little hearts at the bottom and all these little dots. So I'm going to take my little brush and I'm going to fill back in my little dots here. And it's okay if you wind up changing your mind a little bit about where your dots are. Your red layer would have covered most of that. If not, you can always kind of go over it again with a little more red if you find you needed to move them around a little. I shifted mine just a tiny bit from the original. I'm also going to fill in up here where I had this heart, so that way when I put my red down, it'll be a little easier and it won't be trying to cover up any of that yellow. And now for the nitty gritty. I'm going to recommend you dry your canvas before working any further, because you're going to wind up putting your hands all across your canvas, putting in all those little white hearts. Although I guess before I get too far going, I guess I can go ahead and fill in her skin and let that dry a little bit naturally at the bottom. I'm going to use yellow ochre for my skin. You might use a bit of burnt sienna mixed with white, whatever makes the most sense for your particular skin tone. And it's okay if you paint over your face, you're going to paint it back in. She won't be faceless. I'm gonna add a little more white to mine because it's a little more yellow than I meant it to be. My skin has sort of a yellow undertone to it. No, I am not jaundiced and my liver is fine. I just have a bit of a yellow hue to my skin. And I'm going to put that on the hands as well. I'm going to go ahead and stick my hands in. I'm going to stick my yellow ochre down first, and then I'm going to add some white to it. I'm going to mix my paint on my canvas. And then a little on the other side as well. My skin tone is actually pretty close to what this heart is, but I wanted there to be more differentiation. So I'm going to make mine just a touch more yellow than it is, just for that reason. Just in case you were curious. All right, so now I kind of got my hang of it. I'm going to turn my canvas upside down because it makes it easier for me to get at the work at the bottom. And I'm going to start painting my little hearts white so that way I can put the gold on top of it. The gold is iridescent paint, so it would not show really well over this red. And to make it easy for yourself, if you're right-handed or left-handed, it's easier to work from one side and go across the other so you're not putting your hands down in your paint. These don't have to be totally perfect. This is a cute little homemade kind of Valentine, and it's gonna benefit from being a little bit, not totally even and whatnot. Because remember, Valentines wouldn't have been, mass produced the same exact way as they are now. There would be no like buy a box of 24. And they all, have 4 designs and all the designs are, identical to each other. That would not be the case for something like this. So it definitely helps to only put your paint on the tiniest bit of your brush, just to maintain control. And if it helps, you're kind of making a bit of a soft V. When you're making them this small, that's mostly what it is. I would not suggest to like think about it like you're drawing art. And in one like this, the details are what make this particular design so fun. So you definitely want to make sure that you take your time with them. Be patient with yourself. And we don't have to strive for perfect coverage here, because remember, this is just making it easier for us to put the gold paint down. And I think I mentioned in my first Valentine's stream that my husband and I actually do not celebrate Valentine's Day as a rule, because it's so important, to tell people that you love them all the time, not a designated one day a year. You definitely want, the people in your life to know how much you appreciate them. And so much about Valentine's Day gets centered around romantic love, but I remember as a kid, my favorite Valentine was my mom. We always did like cute little Valentine's Day gifts, whether it was a new dress, nothing super expensive, but like, a nice little casual day dress, or a coloring book, or, we never did like stuffed toys or anything silly like that, just because, well, to be honest, those are kind of dust magnets. It's something else you gotta clean, and I ain't about that. I'm too lazy. I don't like things that generate work for me. I want it to be something I can use or it has a purpose. And that's true for any gift for me. I don't like clutter. I'm a crafter. I generate my own clutter. I don't need to be gifted clutter. And I have a lot of like gift anxiety about that. I know I cannot be the only one who's anxious about like receiving surprise gifts. Just because if it's not something you need, you know it's going to show on your face. We're almost done with these tiny little hearts. And then we'll have to do the tiny little hearts on the top. But those are a little different. And we might wind up deviating from the reference image a little on that. And now it's getting a little hard to work at that angle, so I'm going to flip it back around. Oh God, those details make this look so amazing. I am so excited. This is going to be so beautiful. It really makes me want to make this dress now. And be very careful not to stick my hand down where the hearts I've already painted are. Right, we're kind of done with that section for now. We're gonna let that have a break. Now what we're gonna do is we are going to take a little bit of our red from our dress and we're gonna highlight where the back side of this Valentine is. They didn't do it like this, but I think it would benefit from that, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. This is an executive decision that I am making as an artist. I think that it should look like this. And it's always okay to deviate from your reference image. In fact, I strongly encourage it. I do it all the time. It makes it more fun and it makes you feel like you're doing something that, makes more sense for you. And I'm going to let it go around because I really want this to kind of pop against the gold. So I'm just kind of tracing where my heart goes down into the dress. And I'm going to do it on the other side. I'm going to turn it upside down to make it easier for me. Now, because I've done this like this, I probably won't let that be red, the little heart wand thing be red anymore. I'll probably do it in a gold. Right, you're going to want to be really careful when you're going around where your hand is, because you don't want to chop off your hand. Okay, so I'm much happier with that like outline there. I definitely like that better. And I think we're going to fill in the hearts here rather than outline them as they did in the reference, just because I think that would look better. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and fill in those little hearts. I'm pretty sure I said in another video, but the Queen of Hearts is my favorite Disney villain. I have no less than like 3 different cause bounds for her. And if you find like you get a couple that are, a little wonky shaped, you can always kind of fix your hearts with a little bit of white paint after they're dry, then go over it with that yellow if you feel like you need to slim them down or something got a little out of your control. It happens. I think I actually need to trim my brush a little bit. I got a wispy that is making this little part a little difficult. Sometimes your brushes may shed. It's important to keep them good. It just kind of happens sometimes. So if you find you've got like a couple of wispies that are sticking out in a funny way, go ahead and trim them off. Because when you're doing small details like this, that's when that would be most noticeable. Oop. Okay. And then the other side of that little heart. There are definitely a lot of little hearts in this one, but that makes sense given that she's the Queen of Hearts. So definitely, be patient with yourself. This is not going to be quick to do these details, and especially if you've got like wrist issues or anything like that, definitely take a break and pause and come back and whatever you need to do. Don't feel like you have to push yourself. If working on a lot of small details all at once is hard on your hands, it can definitely be hard on mine. We're almost done. We're almost halfway done because there are definitely less on the other side. There we go. We're getting there. We're slowly getting there. Just a few more. You can count down. Feels like one of those fitness instructors where they're counting down squats or something horrible like that. But see how much like this, all these little details elevate these Valentines. Like they definitely thought about, even with a simple design, just by adding a lot of details, it makes it so much more elevated. And just these last two to go, and that's it for like the basing of all of these tiny little hearts, because putting the gold down over the white ones is going to be a lot easier. Okay, so we've got that done. We're going to go ahead and start putting in these little gold details because this area should be dry now. So I'm going to stick my gold paint over top of these white hearts on the dress. And we might have to do this in a couple of layers. Actually, that part never really got cleaned up there. Oh well, it'll be fine. All right, add the detail over here. And then these hearts. And then these one. And this one over here. We will definitely have to go over this with another layer. And we'll go ahead and do this one up here too. Maybe another little layer on the crown. Can't hurt. We want that super shiny. All right, I'm going to use a dotting tool, but you could use the back of your brush. And we're going to put little gold dots along this line here. You want them close together, but not necessarily touching. Because this is sort of like a trim on this drape of this dress. And I think we're going to go ahead and do a little bit where these little dots, circles were in the collar. We're going to go ahead and fill those in with gold. And it's a little easier to do this not with your brush, the soft part of your brush, but using the end just because they're so small. Guess we kind of got that part in. And now we're going to go ahead and start putting in our little gold hearts. And I'm going to turn my canvas upside down to make it easier for me. And I'm just going to cover where I put my little white hearts. And you don't have to be super, it won't be as hard as when you put the white ones in because you're not trying to decide where it goes. It's already there. You're just kind of covering it. This should definitely be a lot quicker than when you put in the white ones. I am so in love with how this dress is coming out. I really do now want to sew it in real life. Oh, gorgeous. So gorgeous. Sometimes I feel like I like to sew or like to paint clothes that I know I never get a chance to actually wear. Now, I haven't decided what I'm going to put here on the wording because I don't think I want to put for a real Queen of Hearts. I think I might just put I'm a real Queen of Hearts. Or maybe you're a real Queen of Hearts, like if you were giving this for somebody. Let me know what you think. I'm or you're. I'm thinking I'm going to do this more as an I'm, so that way it's not like for giving a Valentine. That way it can just be like a self affirmation, and I'm totally here for that. Right, and while I've got this here, I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick layer on these hearts in this on the main part of the dress because I want those really, really really gold. This is a high level trim. She's a queen, no less than lustrous stuff. All right, feeling pretty happy with that. And I don't know if it, oh, there we go. I wasn't sure if it was actually catching all those cute little dots in between the top there. I think I might use those on the lines where the folds of the dress are. They didn't in the design, but I think that might be worth it. But we'll see how I feel about it once I get everything else in. I'm gonna go ahead and put in her lips. It's gotten kind of messy. So I'm going to take a little bit of white and clean it up. And a little bit of my kind of skin color to go over it. And I'll finish cleaning that up when that area is dried. And I'm going to take a little bit of my red and mix it with a little bit of white to get kind of a pink for like this little bit of blush on her cheeks. Actually, I'm really not liking how those lips turned out. I'm just going to paint over them and try again. And sometimes that's how it goes. Sometimes something doesn't come out right in the very first try. That's okay. We'll come back to that spot. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and grab a little bit of black paint. I'm using so little, in fact, I'm going to keep it right here in the cap because I'm just going to kind of outline where the eye is. And while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and put the little red hearts here and in this section on the collar. And then on the other side, might be easy to turn it. It's kind of at an awkward angle. Right, we're going to take our little dotting tool or the back of your brush, and we're going to dot the edges of our collar. And the little lines that are coming off of the red hearts. And I honestly like that so well that I think I am going to go ahead and do that on the little folds of the dress too. I just like the layer of dimension it brings to it. So we're going to elevate her style just a little bit. I might be a little obsessed with dotting tools, so, if you want to skip this and do a different kind of accent there, you're more than welcome. You would want to go over it if you weren't doing the dots in another little thick line of red. Just because you're showing that that's where, there's an abundance of the fabric. That, and I put a little bit of extra gold on my palette. And as you may know by this point, I don't like to waste paint. So if it's on my palette, I find a way to use it, which is part of the reason why I do so much dot work, because it allows me to use up the paint and add a fundamental layer of texture that just enhances it without changing it. And I find that it's especially fun to do this when I'm working on things where it's showing like a garment. Okay, so we've kind of got all the details of her dress kind of highlighted, and it catches the light and it's super sparkly, and that's just fun. Now I am going to clean up a tiny bit on the face where my brush didn't let me get as thin a line as I wanted on this black. So I'm just going to touch that up real quick, because I wanted a super thin line there. And I just couldn't quite get that with what I had. There we go. And we're actually going to fill this part in, because that's where her pupil is. We're going to put a little bit of white over here, because that's where the white of her eye is. I'm going to take another round at these lips and see if I can't get happier with it the next time. So instead, I'm going to start with a little flat line and then just create an oval. A very narrow oval. And then maybe add just a little bit of bump texture on the top. There, that's much better. And just so I can kind of tell where her nose is, I'm going to use a little bit of the red ochre from my hair to just kind of create a small little line for the nose. And speaking of the hair, I think we're ready to go ahead and add in a little bit of, I'm just going to add a couple of like red lines in, because I kind of want a little more texture there. And in the swirls, I'm going to add some like red lines going in the same kind of direction as the swirls. I'm going to add a little bit of that red ochre back in a couple of places, especially kind of down here at the hairline. And she's got a little bit of this like black design on her on her gloves. So I'm going to take the cap back out of my paint, my black paint, and I'm just going to outline where the gloves kind of went. And then on the other side as well, I'm going to flip it because it makes it easier for me to get to. Ooh, my canvas moved on me. It's still really wet and really thin, so I'm just going to wipe a little bit. Put a little more paint back on my brush. And I'm going to put some red lines coming off of the cuff into the blue where my lines were. Because we're trying to kind of tell the story of it being involved. And then the same on the other side. All right, and we've got kind of a red dotting effect that kind of goes at the bottom of our trim. So we're gonna do that on the bottom of our dress. I won't lie, I kind of find the dotting tool to be sort of like relieving, like doing dot work. I find it very like stress relieving. And it definitely adds like that little bit of a doily eyelet lace feel to the bottom of this dress, which definitely is very, very vintage idea. In fact, I might change the wording to just say literally, I'm a queen. I think that's what I'm going to do there. All right, and there seems to be like maybe a little bit of a red dot where the blue ruffles are on the bottom as well. So we're going to add that in. In fact, I'm so here for this. I think I'm gonna follow the lines of the dress, maybe? Nah, I won't do that. That's a bit much. But I am gonna stick just that one little red dot in the middle of each one of these little waves. And I think I'm gonna double up on my layers here and put two little dots in front of the heart. Just because I think that would help here. Yes, I think that looks much better. And I'm going to touch up my little white dots in my hair. So I don't really want to see where the black lines are. So just cleaning up the line. And I might use a little bit of the color I'm using for my hair to kind of go around and shrink my sizes of my dots a little bit. Or it may have gotten a little out of control. They're just kind of telling the story of like pearls being in our hair. And to that end, let's go ahead and add like a couple into the bun. Like, she's a stylish lady. She would have pearls in her bun too. And maybe another small little layer of them underneath. Yeah, I think that looks better. Right now I'm going to take a little bit of the red ochre I was using for my hair, and I'm going to outline where my hands are. Because they're kind of getting lost in my background. And I don't want that. In fact, I might go ahead and change it and not have her have exposed hands at all. I think I'm going to have her wearing red gloves. Oh, but I guess first I'll draw the staff in her hand for the heart. Because that kind of goes across the top. There. Maybe not. I'll go ahead and finish outlining the hand in the red ochre and then see how I feel about it. You know what? I think it can stay as it is. And I'm going to use the red ochre to line the neck where the skin kind of meets the dress, and the same for like around her face. We're just kind of cleaning up the lines for her skin. If you were doing like a dark color, you might use like burnt umber, or if you're, you would just use a darker shade of your existing skin tone. And I think she needs a necklace. I think it's weird that she's not wearing a necklace. I think it should be a pearl necklace. So I'm going to give her a pearl necklace. Like a double layer of pearls. And then we're going to connect them a tiny bit with the gold paint. Just a little quick line, thin line between the dots. I'm going to use some of that dark red to outline the line of the hair too. There. And I'm going to put another layer of the red in some areas just so it's a little bit darker. Not over the whole area, but just some. And the same with down here. We're just kind of finishing telling the story of like the drapes of this dress. We are almost finished, guys. All right, I think she's finished. All I have to do is add what we want to put over here. I'm going to go ahead and dry my canvas. I do think I want to outline her staff in black too, because it's just not popping the way I want. Yeah, I like that better. Okay, now I'm going to take a watercolor pencil to practice where I want to stick my lettering to make sure it fits in the size that I want it and everything else. Helps me avoid making any major mistakes. And I think I'm just going to have it say, I'm a queen. And I'm going to have it in cursive. And then do this part in all cap block letters. Now that I've done this, I can see that my I'm A is not on level with the other. So I'm going to use a little bit of water and lift up where I had sketched it in. Now I'm going to try that again. The A needs to come up higher. There. Now I'm happier with it. So I'm going to go ahead and take out my black paint and I'm going to fill it in. Okay. And I think I'm going to go around the sides and add a little bit of red where I've done this. And I think I'm going to kind of touch up some of my letter work where the line got a little bit got a little thicker than I meant. And I think I'm just going to add a little bit of something here on the sides. I'm not going to go all the way around each letter. Just going to kind of suggest that it's there. We obviously want to highlight the word queen because she is clearly a queen. Like, she is boss. We'll use a little bit of white too, just in a couple of areas. And we'll do that over here for this part of the lettering. And when it's totally dry, I'll clean up my chalk line, my watercolor lines. All right. And this Queen of Hearts is done. What do you think? And against the reference. I hope you had a great time. I'll hope to see you at the easel again here in a little bit, and I'm going to do another painting. Have a wonderful day.